What is art without the muse? Many of Western art's most famous works are depictions of women. But who were these women? Do they have their own stories to share with the world? Hello and welcome to ArtMuse, a podcast that aims to reshape the ways in which we interpret well-known works of art by paying dues to the women whose images have been immortalized, but whose names and stories have been wrongfully overlooked. While these women's faces are familiar to viewers around the world, their identities have been largely forgotten. Together, we will explore the important lives and legacy of the female muse and appreciate these works of art from a new perspective, through the eyes of the women whose image stares back at us. Is the muse in actuality just as, if not more, important than the artists themselves? And I'm your host, Grace Anna. In the words of authors Richard and Marcia Current, she once was the most famous dancer in the world, though some who saw her perform wondered whether what she did was really dancing, and she herself had her doubts. What brought her fame was her way of manipulating voluminous folds of silk, while having beams of colored light play upon them. She may or may not have been a true mistress of terpsichore, but she certainly taught the light to dance. In fact, this woman did much, much more than that. She broke the mold of traditional choreography and prepared the way for the development of modern dance. A magician of light, she made important contributions to stage lighting and lesser ones to cinema techniques. She became the personification of Art Nouveau, the inspiration for artists who, idealizing her, portrayed her more often than any other woman of her time. She, in turn, promoted the work of her artist friends and was responsible for the founding of 2 art museums. Listeners, today I introduce you to the dancer, innovator, and visionary Loïe Fuller, whose pioneering performances paved the way for the creation of modern dance and inspired celebrated dancers such as Isadora Duncan and Josephine Baker. Loïe Fuller was born in Hinsdale, Illinois in 1862 to humble beginnings. When Loïe was 2 years old, her family moved to Chicago, where her parents joined the Progressive Lyceum, a center for free thought, which first fostered Loïe's natural creativity. As a teenager, Loïe set her sights on becoming an actress and began to book minor roles in productions in Chicago. She had her first real break at the age of 19 when she was cast in Buffalo Bill's The Prairie Wolf and toured with his troupe across the country. But it wasn't until many years later that Loïe truly came into her own as a performer. In 1891, Loïe invented what would become her famous serpentine dance, a revolutionary piece of performance art in which Loïe manipulated folds of painted silk fabric to transform herself into abstract shapes like snakes, butterflies, and flowers. The effect was enhanced by the use of colored light, which she projected onto the fabric as she moved around the stage. Unlike regimented and restrictive ballet, Loïe's serpentine dance burst with liveliness and spontaneity. So when Loïe brought her dance to Paris the following year, she became an overnight sensation. She signed a contract with Paris's most important music hall, the Folies Bergère, and all of Paris clamored for a chance to see her perform. Loïe would go on to become one of the most successful performers of her time. She became famous for her mesmerizing dances, which transported her audiences into fantastical realms. As one critic wrote, Loïe was a marvelous dream creature you see dancing madly in a vision, swirling among her dappled veils, which change 10,000 times a minute. And Loïe was not only a pioneering performer, but also a genius innovator of stage lighting and costuming, Called a magician of light, Loïe projected colorful lights and images onto billowing fabrics. In fact, Loïe even worked with Thomas Edison to develop lighting effects, and she patented several of her mechanisms, as well as her original set and costume designs. Loïe's use of lighting was so impressive that in 1909, the director of the Boston Opera House hired her to design the theater's lighting system. And when in 1920, Loïe began experimenting in film, she invented equally impressive effects, becoming the first filmmaker to ever implement negative images and slow motion into a film. So it comes as no surprise that Loïe's enchanting performances caught the attention of some of the greatest artists of her time. Artists were utterly transfixed with Loïe's impressive visual effects and expressive use of color. In fact, Loïe was often referred to as the Queen of Art Nouveau, the artistic movement burgeoning in Paris at the turn of the 20th century. More than 70 different artists captured her likeness across the mediums, making her one of the most frequently depicted women of her time. She was portrayed on paper by Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, made into a poster by Jules Chéret, immortalized in bronze by Raoul Francois Larche, and was even depicted in glass by Tiffany. Loïe, in turn, was a fierce supporter of her artistic friends, particularly the sculptor Auguste Rodin, whose work she promoted across the United States. In fact, Loïe should largely be credited for establishing Rodin's presence in American art institutions and collections. Loïe was also heavily involved with the opening of both San Francisco's Legion of Honor Museum and the Mary Hill Museum of Art. And Loïe's personal life was as forward-thinking as her pioneering performances. Loïe was a proud and open lesbian and lived with her female partner of over 30 years. Her partner, a French-Jewish banking heiress named Gabrielle Bloch, dressed exclusively in men's suits, experimenting with gender fluidity well before her time. And Gabrielle was more than just Loïe's lover. She acted as Loïe's full-time manager, promoter, and was in charge of Loïe's finances and schedule. While Loïe and Gabrielle's relationship initially turned eyebrows and was covered by the press, quite remarkably, for most of their decades-long relationship, the public turned a blind eye, despite the fact that queer relationships were overwhelmingly looked down upon in her time. It clearly took an immense amount of bravery and confidence for Loïe and Gabrielle to be so unapologetically open about their romantic relationship. And Gabrielle was not the only woman that Loïe formed an intimate bond with. Loïe also shared a close relationship with Queen Marie of Romania, a relationship that teetered the line between platonic and romantic. Although most scholars today agree that their relationship remained platonic, the two women exchanged countless loving and emotionally charged letters over the course of many years, certainly posing the possibility that they enjoyed a romantic connection. Whatever the exact dynamic of their relationship was, Loïe rallied behind Queen Marie in World War I and advocated for the support of Romania. In fact, she even played a role in arranging a loan that the United States gave to Romania after the war. And when she toured the United States as a performer, she used her platform to raise American awareness of Romania and its struggles. In later age, when Loïe could no longer perform herself, she established a dance school in Paris, where she instructed girls of all ages on how to recreate her unique performances. She emphasized the importance of improvisation and often remarked that she learned just as much from her students as they learned from her. Her troupe of girls performed all over the world. An eternal inventor, in these performances, Loïe continued to experiment with lighting and effects, still making a mark on both modern dance and stage design well after her days as a performer were behind her. She eventually passed away after contracting pneumonia in January of 1928 at the age of 65. She was survived by her partner Gabrielle, who spent the rest of her life trying to preserve Loïe's legacy. Though Loïe was once the most famous woman in Paris, her life story and immense contributions to both modern dance and stage design have been unfairly written out of history, and her name has largely fallen into obscurity. In today's episode, we aim to honor Loïe's important legacy as a pioneering performer, genius innovator, brilliant dancer, fierce defender of the arts, political advocate, and as a fearless woman who was unafraid to defy societal norms and unapologetically be herself. So without further ado, let's dive in to the marvelous life of Loïe Fuller. Marie-Louise Fuller was born on January 15, 1862, in Hinsdale, Illinois. Her father, Reuben Fuller, originally came from New York and traveled west with his family in wagons during the gold rush. As family tradition goes, their wagons got stuck in mud when they reached Chicago, and the family decided to settle a few miles south, where they established a farm. Her mother, Delilah Eaton, was also originally from New York. Her family had bravely defended America in the Revolutionary War. We are not sure how Reuben and Delilah first met, but they almost certainly bonded over their shared love for the arts. Reuben was both a fiddle player and dancer, and Delilah had aspirations of becoming an opera singer. The two were married in 1850, and shortly after established their own farm a few miles away from Reuben's family farm. It was here on this farm that Loïe was born on a cold winter day. She was Reuben and Delilah's second child and had an older brother named Frank. When Loïe was 2 years old, her parents moved the family from Hinsdale to Chicago, where they opened a boarding house. Her father owned and ran the house, while her mother was in charge of its upkeep. Loïe's earliest memories were from these years at the boarding house, where she enjoyed meeting all the guests that passed through its halls. It was also in Chicago that her parents, both creatively inclined people, joined the Progressive Lyceum for Free Thinkers. Instead of going to church every Sunday, Loïe's family attended the Lyceum, where Loïe was encouraged to foster her own creativity. In fact, it was at the Lyceum that Loïe enjoyed her first successful performance. At the age of 3, Loïe crawled her way onto the Lyceum stage and recited a riveting rendition of "Mary Had a Little Lamb." As Loïe later recalled in her memoir, "Once on stage, I turned around and took in my audience. I did a pretty curtsy and began in a voice which resounded throughout the hall. I repeated the little poem in so serious manner that despite the mistakes I must have made, the spirit of it was intelligible and impressed the audience. I did not stop once. Then I curtsied again and everyone applauded wildly. I went back to the stairs and let myself slide down to the bottom." Though Loïe was evidently too young to walk down the stairs, she was already capable of demanding a standing ovation. In 1873, when Loïe was 12 years old, her family moved once again, this time to Monmouth, Illinois, a small rural town over 100 miles south of Chicago. Though there was a nationwide depression, her father had managed to remain in good financial standing, supplementing his income from the boarding house by raising and selling horses. So when they arrived in Monmouth, they moved into the National Hotel, an elegant establishment in the center of the town's business district. Once settled, Loïe wasted no time in making new friends. Naturally confident and outgoing, she quickly found her way into the center of community activities, including the Dramatic Club, with whom she performed a number of local productions. It was also in Monmouth that Loïe's father established his own dancing academy. Loïe clearly inherited her natural dancing skills from her father. As a local newspaper reported, "Mr. Fuller is an accomplished dancer, thoroughly acquainted with the principles of the art, and skilled in imparting to his pupils that graceful habit of body and ease of movement, so essential to the complete enjoyment of this delightful accomplished art." Like her father, Loïe was born with natural rhythm and moved her body skillfully and gracefully. The dance lessons Loïe's father gave her would leave an indelible imprint on her and help shape her future career in dance. Though Loïe's father would not have known it at the time, this little girl would one day become one of the most famous dancers in the world and forever change the course of dance history. We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers. Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. After a few happy years in Monmouth, Loïe's family eventually moved back to Chicago. Now a teenager, Loïe set her sights on becoming a showgirl. The entertainment industry at the time was experiencing a boom, and new theaters and variety shows were opening up at rapid rates. Loïe began auditioning for shows all over the city and accepted whatever small parts were offered to her. She had her first real break at the age of 19 when she was invited to join Buffalo Bill and his traveling troupe, dancing and strumming the banjo in his drama, The Prairie Wolf. Loïe traveled with Buffalo Bill as far east as Brooklyn, where she performed at Brooklyn's Grand Opera House in January of 1882. Sadly, shortly after, Loïe's time with Buffalo Bill was cut prematurely when she developed smallpox. Though she recovered fully, Buffalo Bill and his troupe had moved on without her. Loïe spent the next few years auditioning and developing her craft as an actress, dancer, and singer. In fact, she took a particular interest in singing and enrolled herself in singing lessons. By 18, she began to have dreams of becoming an opera star, just as her mother had had in her youth. But despite her aspirations, Loïe struggled to find work and barely made enough to scrape by. As a newspaper later reported on this trying time in her life, she could sing all night but was living in dire poverty, managing to indulge in one meal a day, and that one sometimes was not more than the crust of bread. She was anxious to go into opera, but managers laughed when the half-starved, ill-clad girl walked into their offices and asked for an engagement. Yet, despite rejection after rejection, Loïe never gave up on her dream of becoming a star. She was eventually hired by Murray and Murphy, who were presenting an opera at Hooley's Opera House in Chicago. Impressed with her skills as both a dancer and singer, Murray and Murphy cast Loïe as their leading lady. She went on to tour with them all throughout the Northeast, including Boston and New York. Born with natural stage presence, Loïe quickly began to catch the attention of audience members and critics, who were taken with her palpable vivacity and unique way of moving her body. As one reporter in Boston wrote in the summer of 1885, "In her skirt and her jersey-like waist, she created excitement, and people flocked in to see what the newspapers called a sensational dance, which some even called daring, because the dancer wore no corset and the muscular sway of her young figure was visible. Loïe's success with Murray and Murphy led to a number of other promising opportunities. The following year, Loïe was cast as the leading role in Little Jack Shepherd, which was being presented at the Bijou Opera House in New York. Despite playing a male role, Loïe continued to captivate her audiences. As one glowing review in The Times read, "Miss Loïe Fuller, as the hero of the piece, does this little bit very neatly, and indeed, Miss Fuller's impersonation is very commendable throughout the play. She looks like a boy, as few women in breeches do, and she acts like one, which is still less frequently accomplished." In 1887, Loïe played a male role again when she was cast as Aladdin. Interestingly, this role not only continued to grow Loïe's acclaim as a rising American star, but may have first sparked her lifelong interest in stage design and lighting. As author Rhonda Gorelick explained, although Fuller would never admit it publicly, it would become clear that both the role of Aladdin and its attendant technical experience deeply influenced her later experiments in creating veil dances and ephemeral light-based backdrops with her own magical lamps. By 1888, Loïe had created a name for herself as one of America's leading performers. She was invited to perform at many of the country's most revered venues, alongside some of the greatest actors and actresses of her age. And with her newfound fame, Loïe began to catch the attention of many wealthy men, who clamored for her hand in marriage. One of these men was Colonel William B. Hayes, a well-off railroad lawyer who had already amassed a small fortune for himself. A large, burly man in his mid-50s, Hayes was hardly Loïe's type. But in constant need of funding for her artistic ventures, Loïe began to accept Hayes's flattery. It was around this time that Loïe set her sights on creating her own theatrical group, which she hoped could tour throughout the West Indies. In need of a financial sponsor, Loïe turned to Hayes, who agreed to fund her troupe's travels in exchange for provocative photographs of Loïe, a small sacrifice Loïe was willing to make. By the time Loïe planned to leave for the West Indies, Hayes had become so enamored with her that he proposed to her, despite the fact that he was already married. He promised that by the time Loïe returned to New York, he would divorce his wife, which Loïe shrugged off as infatuation. But when she arrived in Kingston, Jamaica, Hayes began to send a stream of telegraphs, professing his deep love for her and asking her if he could join her on her travels. Though Loïe was hesitant at first, she soon saw a golden opportunity to grow her theatrical group. Hayes could join her if he bought interest in her company. They agreed to meet in New Orleans, where Loïe and her troupe were arriving in a few weeks. Without second thought, Hayes not only joined her, but he signed over $25,000 in exchange for 1/3 interest in her company. Hayes also offered to help Loïe's father develop property in Florida, where her father had recently relocated. So when Hayes showed her his divorce papers upon their return to New York, Loïe reluctantly agreed to marry him. It wasn't a marriage of love, but Hayes could certainly help support Loïe's burgeoning career as a performer. She had big ambitions, and she knew she would need money to make her dreams a reality. And so, on May 11, 1889, Loïe and Hayes were married in a common-law ceremony. Loïe was 27 years old, and Hayes over twice her age. Unfortunately, Loïe's marriage to Hayes would not only turn out to be a disaster, but would bring unimaginable misfortune and loss. Shortly after they got married, Loïe set out to produce and star in her own show, which she wanted to premiere in London. It was a costly endeavor. Not only would it require a transatlantic trip, but she needed to find a way to make a name for herself in the theater capital of the world. This meant renting one of London's biggest venues, the famous Globe Theatre. Hayes happily agreed to fund the entire project and pay for all of Loïe's arrangements. He even paid for 3 extra steamship tickets so that he and Loïe's parents could join her in London. But sadly, Loïe's solo show was a total flop. Not only did it receive poor reviews, but theatergoers were repulsed when a cow used for a barnyard scene had a, quote, terrible bout of indigestion and relieved himself all over the stage. The reception was so negative that Loïe was soon after forced to give up her lease at the Globe. Hayes, who quickly returned to New York after Loïe's embarrassing failure, refused to send Loïe any more money. Unable to support herself in London, Loïe now faced piling debt and increasing uncertainty. Her father decided to travel back to New York to speak with Hayes himself and asked that he send Loïe some money while she recalibrated her next move. But shortly after her father's arrival, Loïe received the shocking news that her father had suddenly dropped dead at dinner with Hayes, and that his body had been quickly embalmed. Though the official cause of death on his death certificate was listed as typhoid fever, Loïe instantly became convinced of foul play. She knew that her father had gone to New York specifically to speak with Hayes, and was now sure that Hayes had poisoned him. We can only imagine how heartbroken Loïe must have been to learn that her beloved father, the man who had first taught her how to dance, had fallen at the hands of her husband. Tragically, as we will soon see, Hayes would continue to devastate Loïe's life over the next few years. Now in the throes of both shock and grief, Loïe and her mother remained in London, where they struggled to make ends meet. As time went on, their situation became increasingly dire. As Loïe later recalled, "We could no longer afford our comfortable living quarters. A very cheap hotel sheltered us, reminding us constantly of the long list of unpaid bills it was hoarding for us. Many times, when food became a deep problem, I was sorely afraid we would have starved to death in our garret. Although these trials were hard on us both, Mother and I tried to be cheerful. I made my calls regularly to the agents and was as regularly told there were no openings." Fortunately, an opening eventually presented itself at the Gaiety Theatre, one of London's most popular burlesque theaters. The Gaiety Theatre was particularly known for its dance group, the Gaiety Girls, who performed their famous skirt dance. In this dance, dancers manipulated long gowns while they moved about the stage. Though Loïe was not a Gaiety girl herself, her time at the theater gave her ample opportunity to watch their performances. There is no doubt that Loïe was greatly influenced by the skirt dance, and that it formed the base of her entire subsequent dance career. As author Rhonda Gorelick eloquently wrote, "Though Loïe did not dabble long in skirt dancing, one can easily see the way in which her later work reinterpreted and aestheticized this genre, suppressing the fleshy body underneath and setting the skirt whirling endlessly around an absented physical dancer." By the summer of 1891, Loïe was ready to return to America. As Loïe reflected on her time in London, "As for my sojourn, well, it was punctuated with all kinds of experiences, some pleasant and delightful, others less so. I won't say gloomy, for I never allow an element of gloom or sorrow to enter my affairs. I believe that life is but short at most, and one's duty is to allow nothing but the bright side to manifest itself. My sojourn in London was really an epoch in my life. I met so many nice people there, and the theatrical folk were so generous and kind to me. But America is my home, and so many ties existed here that I began to feel like a refugee away from it all. No, I didn't do much in the way of work over there. I only appeared a limited number of times, and in fact, only went over to study the different methods employed by artists in my particular line of stage work, with the view of perfecting my art. And perfect her art she did. To mark her return to America, Loïe began choreographing a new act. Inspired by the skirt dance, she began experimenting with wearing long flowing fabric and projecting vari-colored light onto her as she danced. She purposefully moved her body in slow and sensuous ways, playing with the fabric and light to transform herself into different natural elements like water and clouds, as well as various animals like snakes and butterflies. The effect was mesmerizing, and Loïe was confident that her act would be a success with American audiences. She began approaching different theater managers, but unfortunately, none were willing to hire her after so much time away. Instead, Loïe was offered a gig at a New York casino. In fact, the owner Rudolph Aronson was so impressed with Loïe's new dance that he immediately signed her on as the casino's leading act. To enhance her performance, he hired musicians to accompany Loïe's movements and renamed the dance the Serpentine Dance. Loïe officially premiered her Serpentine Dance at the New York casino in February of 1892. Her first performance received a standing ovation and glowing reviews in the press. Audience members and critics alike had never before seen anything as magical as watching Loïe transform herself into various natural forms on stage. As a critic from the New York Spirit of the Times described, "Suddenly the stage darkened, and Loïe Fuller appears in a white light, which makes her radiant, and a white robe which surrounds her like a cloud. She floats around the stage, her figure concealed by the exquisite drapery which takes forms of its own and seems instinct with her life. The surprised and delighted spectators do not know what to call her performance. It is not a skirt dance, although she dances and waves a skirt. It is unique, ethereal, and delicious. As she vanishes, leaving only a flutter of her robe on the stage, the theater resounds with thunders of applause. Again she emerges from the darkness, her airy evolutions now tinted blue and purple and crimson, and again the audience rise at her and insist upon seeing her pretty, piquant face before they can believe that the lovely apparition is really a woman. Loïe's Serpentine Dance was such a success that the New York casino planned a tour for her to showcase her new act around the country. But just as Loïe was rising in popularity, Hayes once again reared his head and stomped all over her newfound fame. In another act of vengeance, Hayes came out publicly to deny that Loïe was his legal wife, and stated that he had dirty pictures of her, which he threatened to leak to the press. Hayes was clearly bothered by Loïe's success and wanted to punish her for squandering so much of his money in the past. Loïe could have responded to his allegations by charging him with the murder of her father, but she knew that she had no real evidence to prove her suspicions. She could have also sued him for libel, but instead, Loïe decided to take the route she felt she had the strongest case, that Hayes had lied about divorcing his wife and had committed bigamy by marrying Loïe. To support her case, she showed a judge in New York her marriage certificate, and the following day, Hayes was arrested. In a wild twist of fate, while Hayes was awaiting their trial, he was arrested again, this time for perjury, which an independent party had accused him of. Though the judge ruling Loïe's case eventually dismissed her charges, deeming the marriage paperwork she had not sufficient enough to accuse Hayes of bigamy, he was so shaken by his second arrest that he made the following statement to avoid Loïe's further retaliation. I, William B. Hayes, of my own free will and accord, do hereby publish and declare that I firmly believe that Loïe Fuller is free from all taint of immorality or misconduct of any kind. I never had any indecent or nude pictures of Loïe Fuller, nor do I believe that any such picture has ever been taken. I hereby retract any and all remarks I may have uttered reflecting upon her honor and chastity, and apologize for having uttered them. Hayes was soon after convicted of his charges of perjury and was eventually sent to prison. Though Hayes had caused Loïe unimaginable distress over the past many years, his history of illegal and dangerous behavior finally caught up with him, and Loïe could walk away the real victor. Unfortunately, even with Hayes behind bars, Loïe still faced difficulties in America. Though the Serpentine Dance was Loïe's own creation, the New York casino refused to credit her name on any of the show's posters or bills. And when she asked them to put her name in print, they said they would only do so if she docked her pay. Fed up with the casino's refusal to credit Loïe for her own work, she eventually decided to quit. The casino immediately replaced Loïe with a different dancer, who performed Loïe's original choreography without her consent. They even continued to use the same posters with Loïe's own image on it. In 1892, Loïe sued the New York casino for $1,000 for continuing to use her image for their promotion, but sadly, her lawsuit was dismissed in court. Loïe not only did not receive compensation from the casino, but she was even forced to pay the defendant's legal fees. Loïe then tried to copyright her Serpentine Dance, as not only was the casino using her original choreography, but other imposters began cropping up all over the country. Unfortunately, once again, the judge dismissed her case on the premise that her dance did not have an original narrative, and she could not copyright movements. As he stated, a stage dance illustrating the poetry of motion by a series of graceful movements combined with an attractive arrangement of drapery, lights, and shadows, but telling no story, portraying no character, and depicting no emotion is not a dramatic composition within the meaning of the Copyright Act. Dismayed over the fact that her dance was now being copied across America and that she had no real legal recourse to protect her original choreography, Loïe decided that she would take her Serpentine Dance to Europe. America had failed her, but she was confident in her gifts as a performer and hoped that she could be an even bigger success in Europe. She became specifically intrigued by Paris and began to dream of performing in one of the greatest cultural centers in the world. As Loïe later recalled, "From that moment on, this became a fixed idea with me, to dance in Paris. The notion of going to Paris possessed me. I wanted to go to a city where, as I had been told, educated people would like my dancing and would accord it a place in the realm of art." So when she was invited to perform at the German Theater in Berlin in 1892, Loïe jumped on the opportunity to cross the Atlantic for Europe. As she boarded a Hamburg-bound steamship and looked out at the open sea, Loïe was filled with a sense of excitement over the possibilities that awaited her on the horizon. Now aged 30, she was finally ready to reach the level of stardom she knew she deserved and had worked so hard to achieve. And in fact, she got her first taste of success before her ship even docked. On the route to Germany, the captain asked Loïe to perform for the German seamen on board. who roared with applause as she performed her serpentine dance for them. As Loïe later recalled, "I felt that I had taken my first step in the conquest of a new world." Little did Loïe know just how successful in that new world she was about to become. We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers. Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. Loïe's serpentine dance proved to be a success with more than just German seamen. Loïe's performances in Berlin received rave reviews, and her shows quickly sold out. Audiences were particularly impressed with Loïe's mesmerizing lighting and stage design, as well as her agility as a dancer. But despite Berlin's warm welcome, Loïe was itching to go to Paris, and she left for France's capital in October of 1892, after only a month in Germany. As soon as she arrived, Loïe went straight for the Folies Bergère, Paris's most renowned music hall, famous for its cabaret and vaudeville performances. But much to Loïe's surprise and dismay, she saw a poster outside the theater advertising the Danse Serpentine. Loïe could barely believe her eyes. How could someone be performing her own original dance in Paris? When she inquired inside, Loïe discovered that the dancer was Maybelle Stewart, one of her imposters from America. Loïe marched straight to the manager's office and declared that she was the creator of the serpentine dance and deserved to take Maybelle's place. Hesitant at first, the manager eventually relented and agreed to watch Loïe perform, with only a single violin for accompaniment and footlights to illuminate her. Loïe performed her serpentine dance with all of her heart, mustering all of her energy into each and every step she took. The manager was so impressed that he fired the imposter on the spot and immediately booked Loïe as the theater's headliner. Loïe officially opened at the Folies Bergère on November 5, 1892. Her serpentine dance received deafening applause, and the cheers for an encore were so overwhelming that Loïe ended up dancing for an extra 45 minutes to satisfy the crowd. Her performance received equally congratulatory reviews. Le Figaro declared that no dance has ever been more alluring or more magical. And the critic Roger Marks wrote, "Loïe Fuller is utterly different. She derives her effects from the very profusion of her garments. At the beginning of her act, the theater is dark, the stage and scenery draped in funeral black. From the night, the apparition escapes, takes form, comes to life, under the caress of the electrical beams. She detached herself from the gloomy background, takes on the dazzling whiteness of a diamond, then is covered with all the colors of a jewel box full of precious gems. In the polychromatic waves of light, the exquisite phantom runs back and forth, skims the floor like a dragonfly, skips along like a bird, flaps her wings like a bat. Now she spins, her long skirt to give the appearance of a flower. Next she ruffles it so as to give the illusion of rising and falling waves, stirred by blasts from an electric fan. The material, dizzily swirling, is tinged successfully with all the hues of a rainbow, and the vision is never so splendid, so magical, so enrapturing as the moment when she is about to disappear, to be plunged into nothingness, to be lost in the darkness again." Loïe's performance at the Folies Bergère turned her into an overnight sensation. By the next morning, all of Paris was talking about the, quote, magician of light, who could transform herself into flowers, butterflies, and waves. She continued to perform to full houses over the course of the next few months. In fact, her shows were in such demand that tickets sold out days in advance and became near impossible to find a seat. As Le Figaro reported, Miss Loïe Fuller, the charming creator of the Serpentine dance, is winning every evening at the Folies Bergère, a success without precedent at that theater. Never has there been such enthusiasm on the part of the Paris public. Loïe's performances attracted audience members from all different social classes, and Parisians from high and low society alike crammed together to watch Loïe dance. Loïe also attracted audience members of all ages. After her successful first season, the Folies Bergère arranged matinee performances so that children could also enjoy Loïe's magical dance. For these children, watching Loïe dance felt like their storybooks had come to life, and they were mesmerized by her ability to transform herself into different creatures. As Loïe once described of a child's reaction to her performance, "The unearthly appearance of my dances enraptured children, caught under the spell of my art. One little girl was fascinated and dazed. She did not say a word, did not make the slightest noise, hardly dared to stir. I seemed to have hypnotized her." Loïe was also hired to perform at popular salons and private gatherings, and she always made time to perform for charity. Performing all over the city, it didn't take long for Loïe to become one of Paris's biggest celebrities. The manager of the Folies Bergère was so impressed with her first run that he not only extended Loïe's contract, but brought in an orchestra of over 40 musicians to accompany her. He also provided Loïe with state-of-the-art lighting equipment so that she could achieve the best stage effects possible. Which brings us to an important point. Loïe's rise to fame was just as much due to her ingenious use of stage lighting as it was her skills as a dancer. Loïe used lighting in completely original ways, experimenting with techniques and colors to turn her performances into visual sensations. As Loïe once shared, "I began in utter ignorance of what the effect of one color on another was, and had to learn, as a painter does, what colors gained by union and what colors were ruined by one another." As she experimented more, Loïe meticulously coordinated which colored lights to use with each specific movement. And as her shows grew in demand, she gathered her own team of electricians to help bring her vision to life. In 1896, Loïe even consulted Thomas Edison himself about one of her inventions, and the two remained in touch for many years. Loïe also experimented with using mirrors in her performances, which produced infinite reflections of her dancing image. As one critic remarked, "Her image, her magical undulations repeat infinitely. One sees 10, 15 Loïe Fullers." And she designed all of her own costumes, at times even hand-painting the fabric herself. To prevent her lighting and stage techniques from being copied, Loïe kept her designs a complete secret. Aside from her trusted team of electricians, Loïe never disclosed to anyone how she achieved the effects she did. To further protect herself, Loïe got many of her stage mechanisms patented, including her use of mirrors. After dealing with so many imposters of her Serpentine dance, it's no surprise that Loïe fought hard to protect her original designs in any way she could. It's also no surprise that Loïe's mesmerizing performances attracted Paris's greatest artists. Painters in particular were impressed with her use of color, lighting her stages like paint on a canvas. So when Loïe commissioned artists to make promotional posters for her show, it's no wonder that so many jumped on the opportunity. Loïe commissioned at least 30 different posters to advertise her performance at the Folies Bergère. These posters burst with as much vitality and energy as Loïe's dance itself. In these posters, Loïe twirls with fire, twists and contorts her body, and leaps into the dark abyss. Sadly, there are too many of these posters for us to explore within the confines of this episode, but we will deep dive into a few of the better-known ones. The most famous artist to have turned Loïe into a lithograph poster is the French painter Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. Made in 1893, Lautrec's poster of Loïe was also one of the earliest to date. Interestingly, Loïe actually did not commission Lautrec to make a poster of herself. Instead, Lautrec did so on his own accord, after being enchanted by Loïe's performances. As a cataloger of Lautrec explained, "At the Folies Bergère, Lautrec, like all Parisians, were fascinated by the dancing of Loïe Fuller. He would, no doubt, have liked to have been among those who did posters of her." Lautrec began to frequent Loïe's performances, sketching her and taking down observations of her movements. Once he created a central image, which shows Loïe flapping her long drapery almost like a bird. Lautrec went on to make 50 different lithographs, using watercolor and sprinkled gold, silver, and bronze to create various color variations. While today Lautrec's poster of Loïe is arguably the most well-known and is owned by important institutions such as the Museum of Modern Art, Loïe herself does not seem to have particularly liked Lautrec's poster of her, or in fact Lautrec in general as a person. She never owned a copy of Lautrec's poster, nor did she have a personal relationship with him, as she did with so many of the other artists of her time. Another famous poster of Loïe was created in 1897 by Jules Charest, a pioneering printmaker and lithographer. In fact, Charest is often credited as the originator of the lithographic poster. Charest produced 3 different posters of Loïe, each with a number of color variations. In his most celebrated poster of her, Loïe is caught mid-motion, twisting and twirling her body as she looks over her right shoulder at the viewer. Her hair, a crimson orange, bursts forth like flames. With one foot on point, Loïe seductively kicks her other foot back, revealing the contours of her upper leg and thigh. While Charest's portrait of Loïe is maybe not the most lifelike, it is certainly the most sexualized. Here, Loïe is playful, confident, and proud as she flutters and flaunts her body across the paper. That same year, the Romanian poster artist and illustrator Jean de Paleologue made at least 10 separate posters of Loïe. In one of his most famous, Loïe dances amidst billowing flames, which envelop almost the entirety of the poster. As she steps forward with her arms outstretched, Loïe looks like a goddess, the woman who has managed to tame the fire. In another, Loïe twirls in a colorful abstracted cloud. She is surrounded by bursts of pinks, yellows, and blues, which blend into her own body. Standing on point, Loïe turns her head to the viewer, flashing a flirtatious smile. These posters of Loïe proved to be an immensely successful form of advertisement. They were not only placed outside the Folies Bergère, but on streetcars and prominent walls throughout Paris. And it wasn't only visual artists who were enthralled by Loïe's performances. She also inspired many poets, as well as the leader of the symbolist literary movement, Stéphane Mallarmé, who wrote an entire article dedicated to Loïe. In his article, Mallarmé argued that Loïe's dances were expressions of poetry, just without words, and that Loïe, quote, attempted to express the inexpressible, to surmount the limitations of language. Loïe also inspired musicians, such as the young composer A. Homburg, who wrote the Loïe Fuller Gavotte. The song was so popular that it was transcribed into sheet music and sold to the public. And Loïe influenced the fashion world as well. Paris's biggest department stores began selling Loïe Fuller skirts, shoes, hats, and coats. By 1893, Loïe had infiltrated almost every aspect of Parisian culture. From the theater world, to the art world, to the fashion world, Loïe's name was on everyone's lips. We'll continue our story after a brief word from our advertisers. Welcome back, listeners. Now let's dive back in. Unfortunately, despite Loïe's best attempts to protect her original designs through patents, she could not prevent the surge of imposters that began popping up all over Paris. They became so prevalent that theatergoers could choose between several different serpentine dance performances on any given night. One imposter even pretended to be Loïe herself. Though Loïe could not legally protect her choreography, she did threaten to bring action against any imposter who used her original dance moves without her explicit permission. And while Loïe was batting off persistent imposters, she also came under attack from other dancers who claimed that Loïe's serpentine dance was copied from their own choreography. The loudest accusation came from a dancer named Marie Layton, who had been a Gaiety girl during Loïe's time in London. Layton argued that Loïe had copied their costuming and moves. While it's undeniable that Loïe was influenced by the Gaiety girls, she insisted that they weren't her main source of inspiration. As Loïe defended herself, "A great many accounts have been given of how I first came to start this kind of dancing, and people have said that I took the idea from someone else. This is quite a mistake. The idea came to me by accident. One day while on tour, I put on a little gown in order to act a small part. At the end of the second act, there was a kind of little dance. I was in a great hurry, and I did not want to change my skirt, so I danced with the one I already had on. The muslin flew and blew around me. This delighted the public, and I received quite an ovation. Well, that set me to thinking, and I thought to myself that probably something more could be made out of the idea." Loïe changed the story behind what inspired her to create the serpentine dance several times throughout her life. In reality, Loïe likely drew inspiration from a number of different dances and previous experiences, including her time at the Gaiety Theatre. As authors Richard and Marcia Current eloquently put it, Loïe owed its development to a combination of influences, to earlier models, chance revelations, and a great deal of thought, experiment, and hard work. But regardless of what may have inspired her in the past, as well as the prevalence of imposters posing a threat to her present, Loïe's unique ingenuity could not be copied, nor could she have found it in anyone else. Loïe was one of a kind, and neither her predecessors nor impersonators could come close to rivaling her brilliance as a performer. As one of her contemporaries wrote, "Like every creator of genius, Loïe Fuller has acquired followers, but there is a vast distance between the original and the copies, and her success increases at a much faster rate. This is why, after having looked at the imitation pearl necklace, one is always pleased to admire a genuine pearl." And as another defender of Loïe wrote, "It is the creator of this singular, unreal, fantastic dance who remains the fairy queen of the new kind of entertainment that has made a convert of all of Paris." Unfortunately, despite her immense success, the next few months would prove to be disastrous for Loïe. In the spring of 1893, Loïe was invited by the manager of a theater in Russia to do a tour around the country. Always one for a new adventure, Loïe excitedly signed a contract and made plans to set off for Russia in a few weeks' time. But as Loïe prepared for her tour, her mother's health took a drastic turn for the worse, and soon Loïe found herself in a difficult predicament. Her mother was clearly too ill to accompany Loïe to Russia, but Loïe was also hesitant to leave her mother in Paris for several months without her. At the same time, Loïe knew that if she were to cancel her Russian tour, she could be sued for breach of contract and have to pay a costly penalty. After much debate, Loïe reluctantly decided to follow through with her arrangements to go to Russia. But on the very day of her departure, her mother suffered a stroke and became bedridden. Seeing her mother in such a fragile state, Loïe refused to leave her mother's side, accepting whatever consequences may follow. As anticipated, the manager of the Russian theater sued Loïe for forfeiting their agreement, and she was forced to pay him a hefty fee of $40,000, money she clearly did not have. Instead, Loïe would have to turn over any income she made from her performances to the Russian manager until her debt was paid off. Because the Folies Bergère was closed for the summer, Loïe decided to travel to London in an effort to start paying off her debts. Fortunately, she did enjoy a successful few weeks in London and was able to slowly start bringing her surmounting balance down. Perhaps overly confident, Loïe then decided to travel to New York, believing that she can make enough money there to pay off the entirety of her debts. She arrived in New York in August of 1893. Sadly, Loïe's homecoming to America was nothing like she imagined. She struggled to find any venues, big or small, open to booking her, and she barely made enough earnings to cover the cost of travel, let alone her tremendous debt. Defeated, Loïe returned to Paris that October. And though Paris welcomed her back with open arms, and she resumed her program at the Folies Bergère, she could not escape the debt hanging over her head. Loïe now had to turn over most of her salary to the Russian theater director, barely leaving enough for her to afford food. In fact, more often than not, Loïe was forced to perform on a completely empty stomach. Hardly able to scrape by, Loïe decided to leave the Folies Bergère for better opportunities. In the summer of 1894, she traveled to the Netherlands and Belgium, where she toured in several cities such as Brussels, Antwerp, and The Hague. Fortunately, this time her decision to travel abroad paid off, literally and figuratively. Loïe was a success in every city she traveled to, and she was able to make more money than she did at the Folies Bergère. In The Hague, Loïe even performed for Princess Victoria, who was so impressed with her that she gifted Loïe a watch with an engraving of Loïe dancing on the back. Returning to Paris with renewed confidence, Loïe was ready for a new artistic venture. Her serpentine dance had been a success, but she had an even more ambitious project that she wanted to present. This project was an adaptation of the biblical story of Salome, a Jewish princess who famously asked for the head of Saint John the Baptist. Though Salome was often portrayed as a femme fatale, Loïe's performance would be in defense of Salome and shed a new light on the often misunderstood seductress. With her performance, Loïe wanted to change public perception of Salome, and as a result, elevate her own public perception as a dancer and creative. It would be an ambitious pursuit, but Loïe was never afraid of a challenge. And though her success would not come in the way she imagined, on the horizon was stardom beyond Loïe's wildest dreams, stardom that would soon recognize her as one of the greatest performers in modern history. I hope you have enjoyed part 1 of our 2-part episode on Loïe Fuller. We will continue Loïe's story and honor her immense legacy in part 2 of this episode. I have included images, resources, and suggestions for further reading on the ArtMuse website and Instagram. ArtMuse is produced by Kula Production Company. Today's episode was written by me, your host, Grace Anna. Stay tuned as I continue to share the stories of the women behind some of the world's most important works of art. Until next time, bye for now.